They were both taken and placed in two different rooms. Then they were questioned and asked the question, "What did you see?" And then they relayed the story.
Uh-huh.
And then after that story was relayed, the interrogators looked at them and said, "No, you didn't.
You didn't see what you just...
You didn't see anything like that. And you won't see anything like that. And if you do, punitive action will be taken against you." And so on and so on. Well, long story short, these fellows gave up their commission in the Air Force. One of them became a commercial airline pilot. He just finished up his career,
Darryl,
and now has come forward.
Darryl, good. We're going to pick. I don't want to make it that short. If I can handle a longer story. UFOs over our capital, and he's now told his story, and I want to hear it. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM. Once again, here I am. Actually, tonight is a very good example of what I was telling a caller a little bit earlier. And he called me and said, you know, Art, you ought to change your program. The only thing you ought to have on are mainstream scientists, physicists, astronomers, that sort of thing. And, of course, I have those people on my program all the time. But the truth is not necessarily contained in any one single place or within one a strict paradigm, whether that's conventional science or unconventional science or secret science. This day, my guests are Ronald Regier, who designed and actually worked with spy satellites, and Darryl Sims, who's ex-CIA and has been a UFO investigator for many years now. So, In Search of the Truth, I think, requires many paths, and this is yet one more. We'll get back to them in a moment. All right, back now to my guests. And, Darryl, you were right in the middle of explaining about these objects that appeared over our capital in 1952, I believe, and we sent up a couple of fighters, you said, and the pilots were then debriefed and told they didn't see a damn thing. But one of them now is out of the service, is a commercial pilot, and you said has told his story. What is his story?
Basically, the gentleman, he flew the... and this is on July 26, 1952, and his individual flight record records that in him landing at Langley Air Base at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically relates that during this event where the UFOs were over the Capitol building, they came back, they landed, and were placed in two different rooms, debriefed, and asked the question, what basically did you see?
Right.
And they told them, then they got more specific, and finally they said, as we approached, and they sped away and so on, and all these unbelievable...
Well, what did he describe he saw?
What he described was that the objects were doing remarkable and incredible maneuvers that we were not able to do or match with our aircraft. And strictly from a fighter pilot's point of view, this is what he was relaying to them. And, of course, this was not within the paradigm of the individuals there. But it wasn't like they couldn't see this on radar. I mean, this stuff is actually on film. You can see old film of this sort of thing. I saw it when I was a kid. I
believe they actually had pictures of the objects.
Yes, they did.
Published in the Washington Post or one of the big papers.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing about it, of course, is after they finally questioned them at length and they gave their entire stories, they looked at them and said, no, you didn't. You didn't see anything like that. It didn't happen. This event did not occur. And then they threatened them. And this gentleman, I have him on tape in a public meeting. I had asked him to come forward. He would, and he did. He came forward and gave a public statement, and in the public statement said, they threatened me. He said, I can't figure out why in the world somebody would send me up to do this sort of thing, to face something we don't know what it is, and then come back and then threaten me, because I did what they told me to do. He said, so I gave up my commission and became an airline pilot, and he just retired, and that's the reason he's coming forward, because now he basically has nothing to lose.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask a very sensitive question here. Regarding these fast walkers that you talked about a while ago, Ronald, the 300 and some odd that have been recorded during that period of time you mentioned,
mm-hmm.
Obviously, well, maybe I shouldn't say obviously, but to the best of my knowledge, during those years, we had no such craft, and probably don't today, that would do those kinds of maneuvers and speeds through our atmosphere. Is that fair to say?
Yes, the closest we've got to it is the SR-71, and it doesn't come close to some of the reported phenomena.
So that if these are craft from elsewhere.
That's correct.
Fair assumption, right? You both agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I have had reports, in fact, I have seen video of what appears to be us shooting at them. Are we doing that?
I have no knowledge of that, although I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I can't prove that. However, I have some documents that Dr. Lear and I received while we were down in Brazil that are secret documents from the Brazilian government. Mm-hmm. It goes into, it's in Portuguese, and I have an English translation of it. And soon I'll put these up on our website. But basically what we have here is Daniel Golden's signature. In case people don't know who that is, that's the administrator of NASA.
Indeed.
And Warren Christopher of the United States. And what they're doing is going into, these are documents I've not been able to show Ron yet, but I will. And I assure you, based on his experience, he will see far better than what I have seen here, which shows to me that their primary interest in these documents is controlling airspace in reference to UFOs. Mm-hmm. And I find that rather interesting, especially after these agreements were signed after the so-called Varginha incident.
Well,
and in that particular case, one investigator down there in Brazil, Claudio Covo, and myself have come to an opinion that the possibility exists, based on other testimony, that UFO might in fact have been shot. It had a huge hole in the side of it, was flying around for apparently several hours before it actually landed, and that hence, in my opinion, possibly let off a number of the occupants in different locations, and that's the reason they were found in different locations.
Now, I know that a number of people that I know went down there and investigated this and talked to witnesses who saw the craft, who saw the beings, and there's quite a bit of eyewitness testimony with regard to this incident in Brazil.
Yes, absolutely.
One of them, Stanton Friedman.
Yes, of course.
And so you believe that we shot a hole through this damn thing, it flew for as long as it could, and then landed or crash landed.
I find it amusing that NORAD was the one that called the information to the Brazilian Air Force. How did NORAD know that? How did they know it was coming down in their sector, and how did they know it was coming down to begin with? How did they know any of this?
I don't have the slightest idea, but since you have brought up the subject of NORAD, let me ask you about a rumor that has been flying around all over the place, and it may be absolutely false, and it's a good opportunity to knock it down. Maybe you know something about it, but I am told that quite a large number of employees and their families quickly left NORAD, packed up their stuff, and left the country. Have you heard anything about that? Have either one of you heard anything about that?
I haven't.
I have not.
Okay, both of you say no then.
That's correct. I have
no knowledge of that.
Uh-huh. All right. NORAD, of course, would be responsible for collating the data that these satellites retrieve, wouldn't it?
That's correct. Interestingly enough, we have a treaty with Canada, and NORAD is jointly run by the United States and Canada. As such, that makes them exempt from all Freedom of Information Act requests.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Tidy little arrangement.
Well, I've always felt that even though you can occasionally get a little jewel in a Freedom of Information request because somebody makes a mistake, generally speaking, if they don't want you to know something, NFOIA is not going to get it for you.
That's generally true. One of the good researchers, if I can just relay a little vignette along that line.
Sure.
Lee Graham, I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he's probably written more Freedom of Information Act requests individually than any other 10 people you want to name.
Uh-huh.
And his wife signed for, while he was at work, a response to a Freedom of Information Act request. It turned out that someone was on duty in the FOIA office and wasn't aware of the rules and regulations, and because of the wording of the request, supplied Lee with a classified document.